I want to tell you that I found my favorite book of all time, one of them at least, and it's none other than Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. Guys, I don't even know where to get into this book. If you saw my March wrap up, I touched a little bit on it in there as well. But if you don't know what this book is about, on the surface, it's about this bank robber who tries to rob a bank but fails at doing so. And so he runs into a nearby building where there's an apartment showing happening. So he runs into one of those apartments and takes the people in there, the estate agent and all the people viewing the apartment, as hostages. We're following two timelines. We're following a timeline where we're seeing what happens with the bank robber and all these hostages while they were there in the apartment, and a second timeline when we see the after, where the policemen are investigating into what happened during this situation, because once the situation was relieved and they got all the hostages out, they were not able to find the bank robber, and the bank robber just disappeared. So they're trying to figure out the motive of the bank robber and where the bank robber disappeared to. That's what it sounds like on the surface. It reads a little bit like a mystery, almost like you're trying to figure out what happened and why those things happened. But on the deeper surface, it is just about people. I said this in my wrap up as well. It's really about the human experience, the anxiety of existing. That's what this book is about. It's a book in the third perspective, but it's almost like the narrator is speaking to us and telling us the story. And we see into multiple characters in this book. We see the bank robber, the hostages, the policemen, certain other people associated with these people. For example, one of the characters goes to therapy, so we also see into the psychologist. It's a very, very interesting read. Even though we're seeing into so many characters, not once do you feel confused or like the storyline is getting muddled. Not at all. It just flows through like a breeze. And like I said, it talks about the human experience, right? It talks about your anxieties. The way this book touches on what it feels like to be an adult and to struggle through life is so beautiful. I haven't seen a book get this close and express it so perfectly before. And not to mention, it doesn't do it in a way where you feel like heavy and depressed and you feel like, oh my god, this is bringing me down. Not at all. It just breezes through it. Like I said, you don't even feel the heaviness of it. You just sit there and you just relate, and that you just feel so seen. I felt so seen reading through this book that I was just like so taken aback by the way this book is written. Like I said, it's written by Fredrik Backman, right? But he's a Swedish author, so this book has been translated into English by Neil Smith. So I think both of them have done just such a good job. Like, the writing is unlike anything I've seen before. This book single-handedly handles so many things. We're trying to figure out this little mystery, but it doesn't feel like a mystery, but it is a mystery. I don't know how to explain it. We're also seeing how all these people are connected to each other, different connections that come about. We're seeing how people come and support each other and the experience of sharing. We're seeing the anxieties about being an adult, being a parent, being a loved one to someone and loving someone. We're seeing the pressure of having responsibility on your shoulder. And there's so many great lines that are just sprinkled throughout the book so casually, like you might blink and miss it, but it just hits you so hard in the heart. I just, like, I don't know how to explain. Like, it's so beautiful. The book is so beautiful. There's a lot of things that this book has tackled. Tackling anxiety, depression, also minor trigger warning for suicide. No one actively commits suicide in this book. It is just that a character is mentioned that these people know who committed suicide before. So just a minor trigger warning for that. It tackles loss, the loss of a loved one. And honestly, it was so comforting to read about the way the author has written about the loss of a loved one. There's places, and it's not like we have like passages and passages and a whole section dedicated to it. It's just, like I said, little lines sprinkled throughout from these characters and their experiences and the way they felt and the way they emote. There's all these little lines and all these experiences of the characters that we're reading where they're dealing with the loss of a loved one, and I just found myself relating to it so much. Because if you didn't know, I lost my childhood dog in December. we had to put her to sleep because she had been suffering from sickness for a very long time and there was just no treatment for her anymore. And that experience has been something for me. The reason I started this channel is because of that, because while she was sick, me and my mom were her primary caretakers. So just to find relief and some points of the day, I would create videos and post them here. And then once she passed, um, I decided to continue creating because this channel talking about the books I read, reading in general, is one of the only things that's been holding me up because that loss has been pretty hard. And the way the author talks about losing a loved one and the experience of the one who is left behind, and the experience of like not being able to understand how the world just goes on. Another day comes along and the world is just moving along and you feel like, how are we possibly just getting along with the rest of our life without that someone? Just the way the author talks about loss and talks about love and about connection. um yeah, it's beautiful. I haven't stopped thinking about this book ever since I read it. So that's why I just wanted to come here and say I highly recommend this book. Initially, there are certain things that will like irk you off a little bit, like when the policemen are investigating the hostages and interviewing them to find out what happened. The hostages come across a little too rude. And when I was reading that, I was like sitting there and thinking, like, my god, where, in which country are people allowed to talk to their policemen like this and just anyone in general like this? But it all makes sense in the end. And honestly, just from the very first page will have you. I've never read something like this, and I actually want to share some of my favorite lines. And I'm gonna read some things which, and it may sound like, oh, this will be a dark and heavy book because of the things I'm reading, but trust me, it's not. You actually have fun with it, and it's actually a really funny book too. Like the amount of times I was actually laughing or chuckling, it's insane how much this book made me laugh. Like, oh my god. Like, when the dedication of the book is, this book is dedicated to the voices in my head, the most remarkable of my friends, and to my wife who lives with us. When that's your dedication, you know you're stepping into something good. This is from the very first page, okay? It says, because there's such an unbelievable amount that we're all supposed to be able to cope with these days. You're supposed to have a job and somewhere to live and a family, and you're supposed to pay taxes and have clean underwear, and remember the password to your damn Wi-Fi. Some of us never manage to get the chaos under control, so our lives simply carry on. The world spinning through space at 2 million miles an hour, while we bounce about on its surface like so many lost rocks. Our hearts are bars of soaps that we keep losing hold of. The moment we relax, they drift off and fall in love and get broken, all in the wink of an eye. We're not in control, so we learn to pretend all the time about our jobs and our marriages and our children and everything else. Then there's another one. Sometimes it hurts, it really hurts, for no other reason than the fact that our skin doesn't feel like it's ours. Sometimes we panic because the bills need paying and we have to be grown up and we don't know how, because it's so horribly, desperately easy to fail at being grown up. Bars. This is one of my favorite lines. It says, it's so hard to find the words when all you really want to say is, I can see you're hurting. Like, the way he writes about how we yearn to communicate our pain and to understand the pain of others, but it's so hard to do that today. In these times that we live in, it's so hard for people to just come to each other, to talk to each other, to communicate, and to be able to feel heard. And he puts all of that across so beautifully. Then there's this. We open our eyes in the morning and life is just waiting to tip a fresh avalanche of don't forgets and remembers over us. We don't have time to think or breathe, we just wake up and start digging through the heap because there will be another one dumped on us tomorrow. We look around occasionally at our place of work or at our parents' meetings or out in the street and realize with horror that everyone else seems to know exactly what they're doing. We're the only ones who have to pretend. Everyone else can afford stuff and has a handle on other stuff and enough energy to deal with even more stuff. But we weren't ready to become adults. Someone should have stopped us. I just feel it so hard. I feel that in my soul, like I am just not ready to become an adult in my early 20s and I am struggling. Then there's also moments where he'll just randomly drop this amazing line. Like it'll just come out of nowhere. Like one of the characters is describing another character and saying, "Oh, he's just sensitive and principled," trying to excuse their behavior, and this other character responds saying, "Sensitive and principled. You hear that a lot." Julia nodded, thinking that it was a good description of all the old men who started wars throughout human history. Then there's also a same sex couple that we follow in this book, and she's talking about her relationship as a woman with another woman, and she says, "You don't fall in love with gender, Annalena, you fall in love with an idiot." The book continuously emphasizes the fact that we're all just idiots, falling in love with other idiots and struggling through life together. And again, like other random lines that come out of nowhere, but you're just like, it makes you think. He says, "Have you ever thought about how vegans always talk about saving the planet as if the planet needed you? The planet will survive for billions of years, even without human help. The only people we're killing are ourselves." And I've never thought of it that way. Like, that was interesting to read. Interesting take. I like that. You have to live your life in such a way that you become friends with death. Wow, again. And then there's this beautiful line that says, "That's the power of literature, you know. It can act like little love letters between people who can only explain their feelings by pointing at other people's." What am I doing here? Relating to how he talks about loss, there are lines like, this is right after one of the characters have lost someone in their life and they're talking about that, and he says, "The following morning they were angry at the sun for rising and couldn't forgive the world for living on without her." Like, I was relating to it so hard. Even things like, "That's the kind of thing you miss, that she used to do this, that she used to do that, she is," the grammar, that's the worst thing of all. I'm gonna cry again because I feel like he cut my heart open and poured onto this page the things that I've been struggling to explain to people. It just, there's so many other things that I can't actually talk about or read to you guys because it also kind of spoils the book and spoils the characters, their journey, and you should experience that for yourself. Oh my god, there's this beautiful line about anxiety. It says, "Unfortunately, I think most people would still get more sympathy from their colleagues and bosses at work if they show up looking rough one morning and say, 'I'm hungover,' than if they say, 'I'm suffering from anxiety.' But I think we pass people in the street every day who feel the same as you and I. Many of them just don't know what it is." But yeah, that's all I'm reading to you guys for now because there's much more. You should experience it for yourself. I'm happy I got to read this book, and at a time like this, especially if you're in your 20s and above, highly recommend. Not that you cannot read this when you're younger, but I just feel like you will feel so understood and seen and comforted when you're reading this as you're going through your 20s, 30s, 40s, and so on. I would highly recommend this book to you. Please, please, please give it a chance. Even if you feel like literary fiction is not your thing, pick it up. I promise you will not regret it. So yeah, that was Anxious People by Fredrik Backman, and can't wait to read more from him. If you liked this video, please like, share, subscribe, comment. If you've read this book, please comment and tell me what you felt about it or if you plan to read it. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.